Fantastic Four, I don't know if you can really say that it was a flop because this box office had been soft the whole summer.
The theater to home, the theater to streaming window is like what, 30 days now?
Yeah, that was
like 25 to 30 days.
That depends on the studio. That has nothing to do with Fantastic Four just yet because Disney still has them running.
Right, it's still.
So I don't. But they keep dropping off big numbers each week. So they're going to slow crawl to 500 mil and they're not going to make 600 mil before it's full, unless there's some kind of thing that happens that get people back into the theaters. You're just having this big drop off. Weapons had I think 20% drop off from last week from its debut. Mm-hmm. So it's just across the board. People don't have, I think it's the inflation and recession stuff, but
also like IMAX films cost 34. Like I backed out on going to see Superman in IMAX because $35. Like I don't know. I'm not. First of all, it wasn't filmed in IMAX, and I think there's a major difference between filmed for IMAX and filmed in IMAX. Filmed in IMAX, I will spend $35. I'll spend $40. If it looks and if it looks and feels and has the cinematography of an Oppenheimer that was filmed completely end to end in IMAX, then yes, because it's eye-watering. It's when something is properly filmed in IMAX with a good cinematographer, it is absolutely eye-watering and worth every dime that you spend.
But the IMAX wasn't the draw, so that was only that would have only boosted if it had been filmed in IMAX. Well, that's my point.
Like people aren't, and people may want to go see it. Like every IMAX showing opening weekend that I've been to for the last decade
doesn't drive up the numbers though, because it's only in certain parts of the country. So
that's true.
You have a lot of IMAX theaters.
And then proper IMAX theaters, right? Yeah.
But like me, as someone that lives in, the middle or the southern parts of the country, you're talking about having
they have IMAX theaters, but
25 to 30 miles to see that to a whole nother town, sometimes a whole nother state, just to see it in IMAX. So I think that's not the driver.
Okay.
So fun fact, the top grossing movie of the month so far, it's only been 2 weeks, is Weapons. And then right after Weapons is Fantastic Four, Bad Guys 2, Freakier Friday, The Naked Gun, Superman, Jurassic World, Together, F1, and Nobody 2. This is just for these past 2 weeks, not the summer.
And that's the top 10, you said?
But that was the top 10 just right.
Okay.
Yeah, for the last 2 weeks.
It just Fantastic Four, number 2, right?
That's for its number 2, yeah. But it's still sitting at about just about 250 mil. And then Superman's already broke about 335. Jurassic World 320. Okay, F1
and that's just domestically. So
domestic just totally gross. Yeah,
total.
That's kind of interesting. Very interesting.
Very.
Yeah, Fantastic Four if you just remove all of the factors that we just mentioned, okay, and all of those things by any metric, it's a box office flop, okay, because of all of the money that was spent to put it together, to make it.
Would you say that of Superman as well?
How much?
What I said for Superman made a third of its profit back on, I think, on the domestic. Or how much did they spend on Superman? 2 mil? Same 200 mil?
200, I think. 250, somewhere thereabout.
And then how much did Superman make?
Wait to get the numbers. So for Fantastic Four, budget is about 200. Total box office, including overseas, is now sitting at about 469. Superman is probably similar in terms of budget wise.
Superman budget was 225.
Yep. All right. And so now it's at what, 595 as a thing. Yeah, I mean, I think
so globally, but
globally,
it'll also cross 600 after this weekend.
Exactly.
So,
right. So I think for me, a flop is. I was going to say a flop for me. I take this back. I would say doubling your budget is not a flop. That means you basically made your money back. Essentially,
but double your budget, not making your budget.
You got to double it. Yeah.
That may be a personal metric, but I'm talking about like the way that the studio looks at it.
The studio measurement, from what I recall, is 2.5 times what it costs to make it.
It's 2/3 of the budget. And I know this because
to bring it back.
To bring it back. That's what it is. Mm-hmm.
So that's the case. Both Spider-Man, Superman, and Fantastic Four maybe just beat it. Maybe.
In any other year, they would be flops.
Right.
But I think because 100%. Of the circumstances that's surrounding both films, you can't call them a flop because they both made half of what they spent back, over half of what they spent. And when it's all said and done, they would have made close enough to that 2/3 of what basically tripling what they spent. Right. So they'll get close enough. And I think the conventional wisdom for releasing early in digital is to just suggest, Superman's got some momentum, but the momentum is not still there in people going to theater. Now, with this release now on streaming.
On pay-per-view specifically. Yeah, it's paid,
exactly.
It's paid video on demand.
It's paid video on demand, but you're going to get I've been seeing posts all day. I just saw Superman for the first time. That means that person spent either $25 to rent it or they spent $30 to buy it. Right. So people are making that decision to stay home and spend the extra dough.
And I think you're right. I think it's like you said, it's about like double. And now, usually when they release numbers, it's always the production cost. They never talk about the marketing. And Superman marketing easily would have probably added an extra $100 million.
Extra $100 million, easy.
Easily.
Definitely.
Easily.
Definitely.
So you're right. So if that's the case, so I mean, it'll probably be a break even moment, and like I think the jump to pay per view is actually smart. I think because like you said, now people that don't go to the movies will just be like, oh, I'm gonna just go buy it right now, like that. So I'm curious to see how Fantastic Four will, because like Fantastic Four, they're letting it run for pretty much the rest of the summer, and that's
that's the usual Marvel schedule. Like they don't.
And that's the usual.
They don't pull them early.
Yeah. But I think that they're probably going to want to double think that at this point with or they're going to have to stop spending as much money because this wasn't the payoff that they wanted. And not to get too much into that, but here you have, I think with the Fantastic Four, it's a good movie, solid, so I think they can still make money. There's no reason to pull it right now, but future strategy might say, give us if it has that
pulling,
big of
leave it in theaters or do both.
Yeah, true. You can do both, but I'm saying we're talking big drop-offs, not like 10%, not 15%. We're talking
20, 30,
20, 30 drop-offs. I said when you have that situation, it might be something to consider. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're still making money. We could possibly leave it in the limited theaters, the coastal cities and stuff like that, or a few cities in the Midwest, the major places. But then let's go ahead and do an early release and see what that gets us. We won't lose a lot as much doing it that way as if the normal box office release. It's not the same stakes or whatever.
And if there were any questions about whether or not our phones are listening to us, and I'm not bullshitting, that just popped up a Variety article that says over the weekend, Superman added 3.1 million overseas and 8.4 million globally. At this point, Superman currently is at 595 million and is unlikely to surpass the haul of the character's last solo outing in 2013, Man of Steel, which flew to 670 million. I wouldn't even make that
which is a stupid comparison for many. Not a stupid comparison, but it's not.
It's a bad comparison.
It's not a good comparison. Yes, I compared it to Iron Man, and when I looked at the numbers today, I'm glad I did because it was a very similar outcome. Now, obviously, you have to adjust for inflation and all that stuff, but we're not so far away from that. That was just less than 20 years ago. So, but it was a similar, almost uncanny start. Iron Man made just about 600 million for Paramount, or was it Columbia? Well, whichever studio,
it was Paramount.
Yes, at the time. Good reception. The same thing was happening at the time. You had a talk of fatigue for the superhero genre because remember we had 10 years of the first decade of the 21st century. All superhero movies, all superhero. They weren't connected, but there was a whole lot of them. So,
and they were bad, most of them.
and they were bad until you got to the Dark Knight, and then you had the diamonds in the rough, like your Spider-Man 2 and a few others. But it was not that consistency. But there was quantity, a huge quantity. Iron Man happened, changed the game. The Dark Knight was pretty much done. It was on its way out. So I see something happening with that right now. I think the Marvel did a soft one. They should have did a hard restart, but they did do a soft restart. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Doom.
In hindsight, like Andor is one of those ones where it's like, all right, I think it's required watching because it explains a lot of the lore and like much more of the resistance.
Yep. Yeah.
Instead of
I
being
agree with that.
A quick thing. Like Andor you're just like, damn, the resistance was a huge fucking deal. And how that came
the world
about.
building in Andor makes it dope. And I think that's why I was saying like Clone Wars, you skip the first 1 or 2 seasons, but the rest of it is super dope. But it gives context to, because after I rewatched Clone Wars, then I watched Revenge of the Sith, it definitely made it a better movie because you had context there.
Oh yeah. You can watch it's almost like watching a really long episode of Clone Wars after that.
Because, and Rogue One, the same thing, right? Andor, you finish it, you watch Rogue One, you're like, oh shit, like all this stuff is like, boom.
Yeah, Rogue One I had issues with, but I guess Andor fixed a lot of issues, and now Rogue One makes more sense to me for certain characters. But I was just saying, Josh, my wife she just got back into Star Wars. She was like, where should she start? And I was like, well, if you're going to start in chronological order, this is how I'll watch it. But she's not trying to watch the animation. She's just trying to watch the movies, how they were released, and like at the time. And she got to episodes 1, 2, and 3, and she was like, yeah, this is still bad. I was like, yeah, but if you watch the Clone Wars and all these other things, it kind of comes together.
It makes them better.
It makes it a little bit better, but it's not required, obviously.
Yeah, just like Rebels. Like Rebels is
see what she thinks about the sequel series because
we'll see
tomato, if you ask me.
Yeah, we'll see if she gets there. And I just said, I was like, in my opinion, if you want a recommendation of what to watch, I can give you that. And if you're just curious about what happened, you can just go to YouTube and get the Cliff Notes versions of what you get.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's why
all of it is inconsistent anyway. So
and that's part of the reason why I enjoyed Clone Wars, just because like there was elements that in Attack of the Clones that was kind of like, oh, but this could have been cool. This could have been cool. Then you watch Clone Wars, like, oh, it actually is cool, And then you
mean like in Clone Wars, how they were actually actively trying to find out who the Sith Lord was, as opposed to you go from episode 1 to episode 2, and there's like now like that weird scene where Dooku is telling Obi-Wan that there's a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious controlling the Senate, and I was like, and Obi-Wan is kind of like, whatever, dude, you're the evil guy. I'm going to try him. Exactly. I hate you traitor. And he's like, no, Darth Sidious is leading the Senate. Like he literally told him. Like he told him.
Obi-Wan's like,
what's happening? Yeah,
and so Jedi intuition and detective work. Like he told you some, like you just gonna blow that off. All right.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. Like that's why between episodes 1 and 2, there's this huge gap of, well, what were you guys doing after you found out that there was a Sith Lord out there, and you
see my
had that aspect of lore that tells you that there's 2 of them. So at the very least, you suspect Count Dooku because he's a former Jedi Master. He's kind of gone rogue, but there was no investigation, no narrative thread that said that they were looking into the matter.
Yeah. And it made again, we always talk about how the Jedi Council is like the most inefficient organization of all time in any fictional anything. But and that's why I like
their
cockiness and hubris.
There's an irony there too, because they're written so they're supposed to be wise, but they're written to be completely imbecilic in terms of how they operate. And they not in the legendary canon, but in the way George had written things, and
and the whole idea is supposed to be that the shroud of the dark side sort of made it, so that they wouldn't, exactly.
That was his one line. And so then Filoni expanded upon that to show us how, which is like, okay, they're not supposed to be fighting wars. That's a component of the dark side. So when you make them generals, which is exactly what Palpatine does, he establishes them as generals, that they are managing the war, that they are the ones that are, all they're doing is just conferring to him for big decisions and things like that. So that Filoni shows us that is one of the many ways that their vision becomes clouded in the Force, and they can't see, even though it's still kind of a long way to get to.
It's still murky as hell, yeah.
Right, to explain that even Yoda can't see the Dark Lord of the Sith sitting 2 feet from, like 6 inches from him.
Yo, how good was Sidious to be like, just hide his aura like that? That's crazy.
To his credit, Sidious is all, that was Bane's design, that when they were ready to make their move, which he did, Darth Sidious is, remember the line he says to Rey, I am all the Sith? The Dark Lord of the Sith is all the Sith in terms of knowledge and power, and that
cumulative power.
And they can tap into that. That's why Yoda couldn't best Sidious. He was better than him in terms of dueling, but Sidious was raw power, and he was just pulling nonstop. I mean, the stuff he was doing in that chamber, like, come on, like that's raw power.
And I like that's the part where, to Filoni's credit, in the Clone Wars, he expands on that. So you get that gravity. Because I remember watching from Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith, and I was like, wait, hold on. Y'all been chasing Dooku all this time. You chopped his head off in like 2 seconds. And then when I rewatched Clone Wars, and then right after Clone Wars ended, I went and watched Revenge of the Sith. I was like, oh, it's been 3-4 years of you guys hunting this dude.
Yeah. And now encountering him, and him still besting him, but each time Anakin gets better and closer to taking them down. And there's one episode where actually they parallel one of the times where he tries to, where Sidious has them come in to kidnap himself as Palpatine, and as Dooku is walking out with him and he's fighting Anakin, he notices that Anakin is like taking everything. He's taking the Force lightning, he's taking it all, and he's still coming. And like you can see Sidious is like smiling because he's like he's already pegged.
He's almost there.
Yeah, he's almost ready. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why the Clone Wars stuff, to me, it's like, it actually is almost, I think it's almost a must watch to add into everything, just like you say Andor is. The rest of the stuff, whatever. But yeah.
I would say Rebels, for me personally, Rebels, Bad Batch, and Clone Wars is required watching to see the stories within the stories, that there's context there that makes sense for the larger world building.
Sure.
For me, just me personally.
I would agree with that. I would say that Clone Wars is more essential to understanding the prequel trilogy than Rebels is to understanding anything during that. During that period. But still important, because before we didn't have, much like with Andor, we didn't have the imagination of how this thing was built to be able to take on a galactic empire. So both between Andor And to, like your point, Cam, Rebels, then that's what makes Rebels such essential watch because they literally build the rebellion in both of those stories.
I would also say standalone Rebels is just good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's just great
just
writing,
good.
and I said Josh and I were talking about just because I said that if you just look at Rebels, you can see the problem with the live action. Rebels has one through line of what that show is about. Each season, it is an escalation of that, which is these rebels, these renegades, a Jedi, a fighter pilot, a warrior, all of a Mandalorian, and some punk kid come together to create what will be the Rebel Alliance. And each season, it's about them reaching for that goal, but adding the stakes. Vader, first the Grand Inquisitor, then Vader, then Thrawn, and Tarkin being there the whole time. And so it's all about character. It's all about their choices, their choices that they make, even from the very beginning when Ezra chooses to stay to join them and follow them on the Ghost to their adventure. It's all about character and choices. The live action is about plot first.
And I think that's the part that makes and it's funny because you can tell they learn from their mistakes from Clone Wars. Because even in Clone Wars, that first season to maybe 2 seasons was very Anakin-centric. And once they kind of figured like he's the most annoying character of the whole world, they shifted it to Ahsoka. They shifted it to the clones. They shifted it to all these different other characters that were super interesting.
To Padme, to members of the Senate, to
the intrigue.
Exactly. They took us around the world that is Star Wars in that era of the individuals who were having the most impact as far as the Clone War was concerned. And that's what expanded the world. And even in that, you didn't like the difference between now with the new creators and how, like in the Acolyte, they just pull things from the legends and haphazardly put them in there, and they muddy the already muddy continuity. Whereas Filoni is like, no, I'm not gonna just throw things in there. I'm gonna build towards it. So then you can get the Darksaber and the background about the Mandalorians and stuff like that. The only thing I didn't like with Filoni is just the way they brought in Thrawn. That's about it. But otherwise, Thrawn has been a great character. And Josh knows what I'm talking about in terms of his Heir of the Empire storyline versus him just kind of being there, but then he pops up and he's like, oh, well, the Emperor made me Grand Admiral. But it's like, no, he kind of earned that.
And I think the thing that makes the expansion work is if you just watch Star Wars from A New Hope, like it's almost like A New Hope basically just feels like it starts out as, we don't like the Emperor and we don't like his rules, so we're going to rebel. And that's just kind of it. Like one day, a bunch of people just decided he's not very nice. I don't like him. And went off to do their own thing. And I feel like Clone Wars and Rebels definitely expands on some and Andor, especially. And I think Andor more than anything else impacts the thing that we've always said. You show, the oppression of the people. Yeah. What happens when you have an imperial state that imposes the kind of draconian sort of rule that the Emperor ends up in, and it's slow and it's gradual and there are layers to it. There's the ISB that sort of is the on the ground enforcement unit, and how they sort of mete out the Emperor's edicts and Tarkin's edict, and it ends up making the thing so much more grandiose than what you walk into just watching A New Hope cold. I think that's and Filoni right on top of it, at the same way. And I think that's the beauty of what made the book even the expanded book, what is now referred to as Legends, that's what made that stuff work. I don't think they needed to read. I realize I'm rehashing something I said probably 1,000 times, but they didn't need to reset. They could have just kept going. Like, all right, fine. You know what? There are inconsistencies. There aren't so many, in my opinion, having read most of the Legends content, more so the novels than the comics. But I feel like, yes, there were inconsistencies, but I don't feel like there were enough inconsistencies to be like, you know what? We'll just reset the whole thing. It's just too much.
It wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that. It wasn't
nowhere near like that because a lot of the writers were given they did specific things and they stayed in that corner of what they were writing. And the only inconsistency that you would find is maybe at best, there would be some things that didn't line up that you knew from the movie or from another story, but it wasn't like it is now where it's like totally you just can't make heads or tails. If you try, you just really shouldn't try.
So,
and that, people, is what we call the after show.
Right. I don't know how we do this every pod. We get into Star Wars and just go.
Exactly.
This is how the pod started. This is how the pod started. It's us. It's us in a chat talking exactly this. It's just that we're talking face to face and not typing.
Well, Star Wars
exactly.
It's the cornerstone of nerd pop culture.
All about content, people. All about content.